Richard Whitmore's hands trembled as he stared at the crescent moon necklace around Amora's neck. His face went white. His wife Evelyn gasped, stumbling backward. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, his voice barely a whisper. Amora's fingers touched the pendant her mother had given her before she died. "It was my mother's," she said simply. The room went dead silent. Richard's eyes locked on the necklace like he'd seen a ghost. Then he spoke the words that would destroy everything. "I gave this to Adana Okoye 20 years ago, the day before she disappeared forever. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I have missed you all. Missed all the experiences we've had together. It's been a rough ride as we're currently battling some technical issues, but trust me, we're getting everything back and running. So stick around. I need your support on YouTube now more than ever. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. The rain fell in relentless sheets, drumming against the tinted windows of the sleek black Bentley as it glided through the iron gates of the Whitmore estate. Inside, Ethan Whitmore's fingers tightened around the steering wheel, his knuckles pale against the leather. His heart thudded, not from the storm raging outside, but from the woman sitting beside him, her presence a quiet fire that warmed the cold leather interior. Amara Adeyemi's dark eyes sparkled as she gazed out at the sprawling mansion, its marble columns glowing faintly under the floodlights. She didn't fidget or fuss, but her fingers traced the edge of a silver necklace nestled against her collarbone. A simple pendant, unassuming yet strangely heavy with meaning Ethan couldn't yet grasp. He stole a glance at her, his chest tightening. Amara was unlike anyone he'd ever met. Her laughter was a melody that could cut through the stuffy boardrooms of his father's empire, her wit sharp enough to disarm even the most cynical of Manhattan's elite. They'd met 6 months ago at a charity gala, where she'd been serving drinks, her smile outshining the crystal chandeliers. Now she was here, about to step into the lion's den of his family's world, a world of wealth, power, and secrets that clung to the Whitmore name like damp moss to stone. Ethan's throat felt dry as he parked in the circular driveway. The mansion loomed, its grandeur oppressive under the storm's weight. He'd spent his life navigating its halls, dodging his father's expectations and his mother's icy disapproval. Bringing Amara here was a gamble, one that could either cement their bond or shatter it. His parents, Richard and Evelyn Whitmore, were old money, their values forged in a world where appearances were everything and outsiders were rarely welcomed. Amara, with her radiant confidence and Nigerian heritage, was as much an outsider as one could be in their eyes. "You okay?" Amara's voice was soft, but it carried a strength that grounded him. Her hand brushed his, warm and steady. Her nails painted a deep crimson that matched the courage he admired in her. He forced a smile, though his stomach churned. "Yeah, just preparing for the Inquisition." She chuckled, the sound easing the knot in his chest. "I've faced worse than a couple of skeptical parents. Let's do this." They stepped out into the rain, Ethan holding an umbrella over them as they hurried toward the massive oak doors. The air smelled of wet earth and pine, mingling with Amara's faint jasmine perfume. As they reached the threshold, Ethan's eyes caught a glint of light from her necklace, a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon, cradling a small, dark stone. It seemed ordinary, yet something about it tugged at the edges of his memory, a whisper of unease he couldn't place. The doors swung open, revealing the grand foyer with its polished marble floors and towering chandelier. Evelyn Whitmore stood there, her platinum hair impeccable, her smile as sharp as cut glass. "Ethan, darling," she said, her voice smooth but laced with an edge. Her eyes flicked to Amara, appraising her in a single, piercing glance. "And you must be Amara. Welcome." Amara extended a hand, her posture regal despite the subtle hostility in Evelyn's gaze. "Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore. It's an honor to be here." Ethan's heart pounded as he watched the exchange. His mother's smile didn't reach her eyes, and his father, standing by the staircase, was a statue of stern authority, his grey suit immaculate. Richard Whitmore's presence filled the room, his silence more intimidating than words. Ethan had warned Amara about them, but seeing her stand tall under their scrutiny made his admiration for her swell. "Dinner is ready," Evelyn said, gesturing toward the dining room. "Let's not keep the staff waiting." As they moved deeper into the house, Ethan's gaze drifted back to Amara's necklace. That fleeting sense of unease grew sharper, like a shadow moving just out of sight. Why did it feel familiar? Why did it make his pulse quicken, not with love or excitement, but with something closer to dread? They reached the dining room, its long mahogany table set with crystal and silver. Amara sat beside Ethan, her warmth a stark contrast to the cold elegance around them. The conversation began politely. Questions about Amara's work as a community organizer, her upbringing in Lagos, her move to New York. But Ethan could feel the undercurrent, the unspoken judgment in his parents' measured tones. Then, as Amara reached for her glass, the light caught her necklace again. Richard's eyes narrowed, his fork pausing midair. Evelyn's smile faltered, her fingers tightening around her napkin. Ethan's breath hitched. He saw it now, the way his parents' gazes locked on the pendant, their faces paling as if they'd seen a ghost. "Amara," Richard said, his voice low, almost a growl. "That necklace, where did you get it?" The room seemed to still, the storm outside fading to a distant hum. Amara's hand rose to the pendant, her expression calm but curious. "It was my mother's," she said simply. "She gave it to me before she passed." "Why?" Ethan's heart stopped. His father's face was a mask of shock, his mother's eyes wide with something like fear. The necklace, a simple crescent moon with a dark stone, held a secret, one that tied Amara to the Whitmores in a way Ethan could never have imagined. What was it about that pendant that made his parents look like they'd been struck? And what did it mean for the woman he was falling in love with? Have you ever discovered something unexpected about someone close to you that changed how you saw them? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. The dining room's chandelier cast a warm glow over the table, but the air felt brittle, as if one wrong word might shatter it. Amara sat poised, her fingers resting lightly on the stem of her wine glass, her dark eyes scanning the faces of Ethan's parents. She was a study in calm, but Ethan could sense the alertness beneath her composure, like a gazelle sensing a predator in the tall grass. He wanted to reach for her hand, to anchor her against the storm he knew was brewing, but his own hands were clammy, his mind still reeling from his parents' reaction to her necklace. Richard Whitmore cleared his throat, breaking the silence that had settled after Amara's response about the pendant. "It's an unusual piece," he said, his voice carefully neutral, though his eyes lingered on the crescent moon pendant with an intensity that made Ethan's skin prickle. "Your mother must have had exquisite taste." Amara smiled, but it was a guarded smile, one Ethan had seen when she navigated tough conversations with city officials or skeptical donors at her community center. "She did," she said. "This was her most treasured possession. She said it carried our family's history." Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line, her fingers toying with the pearls at her neck. "How fascinating," she murmured, though her tone suggested anything but fascination. She shifted her gaze to Ethan, her eyes carrying a warning he couldn't decipher. "Ethan, darling, why don't you tell us more about how you two met?" Ethan's chest loosened slightly at the change in topic, though the tension in the room remained, coiled like a spring. He glanced at Amara, her presence grounding him. "It was at the Hope Gala last spring," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "Amara was working the event, and I couldn't take my eyes off her." Amara's lips curved into a genuine smile, her eyes softening as they met his. He was trying to charm his way into a second glass of champagne, she teased, her voice warm with affection. I told him he'd have to earn it with a better story than I'm a Whitmore. Richard chuckled, but it was a hollow sound lacking warmth. And did he? Oh, he did, Amara said, her gaze holding Ethan's for a moment longer than necessary. He told me about the time he got lost hiking in the Adirondacks as a kid, how he cried under a tree until his dad found him. It was real. Ethan felt a flush creep up his neck. That story wasn't one he shared often. It was too raw, too revealing of the boy who'd felt small in the shadow of his father's empire. But with Amara, it had slipped out naturally, her warmth coaxing it from him like sunlight drawing open a flower. That night, under the gala's glittering lights, he'd seen something in her. A strength tempered by kindness, a fire that burned without consuming. He'd been drawn to her ever since. Evelyn's smile was tight, her eyes flicking to Amara's necklace again. How charming, she said, her voice dripping with politeness. And you, Amara? What brings you to New York? Surely it's not just serving drinks at galas. Ethan tensed, sensing the barb beneath his mother's words. Amara, however, didn't flinch. I came to build something, she said, her voice steady but laced with pride. I run a community center in Brooklyn, youth programs, job training, that sort of thing. It's not glamorous, but it's home. Home, Richard echoed, his tone unreadable. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. And your family? Are they still in Lagos, was it? Amara's expression flickered, a shadow passing over her face, so quickly Ethan almost missed it. My parents passed when I was young, she said, her voice soft but firm. I was raised by my aunt in Lagos until I moved here for college. She's the only family I have left. Ethan's heart ached at the quiet weight in her words. He knew bits of her story, how her parents had died in a car accident when she was 10, how her aunt had sacrificed everything to give her a chance at a better life. But hearing it now, in this sterile dining room, made him want to shield her from his parents' scrutiny. He knew what they were doing, probing, testing, looking for cracks in her armor. It was what they did to anyone who threatened their carefully curated world. And this aunt, Evelyn said, her voice saccharine, she must be so proud of your community work. She is, Amara replied, meeting Evelyn's gaze without hesitation. She taught me that family isn't just blood. It's the people you choose to fight for. That's what my work is about. Ethan's chest swelled with admiration, but the moment was cut short by a sharp clink, Richard's fork hitting his plate. A noble cause, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. But family can be complicated, can't it? Sometimes it holds secrets we don't even know ourselves. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Ethan's eyes darted to Amara's necklace again, that crescent moon glinting under the chandelier's light. Why did it unsettle his parents so much? And why did Richard's words feel like a warning? Amara tilted her head, her expression curious but guarded. Secrets? She asked, her voice light but probing. What kind do you mean? Richard's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Ethan thought he saw a flicker of something. Fear? Guilt? In his father's eyes. But before he could respond, Evelyn rose abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Let's have dessert in the parlor, she said, her voice overly bright. The staff made a lovely creme brulee. As they moved to the parlor, Ethan fell into step beside Amara, his hand brushing hers. You're doing great, he whispered, hoping to ease the tension he saw in her shoulders. She gave him a small smile, but her eyes were distant, her fingers grazing the pendant again. Your parents, they're intense, she murmured. And that look they gave my necklace, what's that about? I don't know, Ethan admitted, his stomach twisting. But I'll find out. As they entered the parlor, Ethan's mind raced. Amara was everything he wanted, fierce, compassionate, unafraid to stand her ground. But the necklace, and his parents' reaction to it, hinted at a deeper connection, a secret buried in the Whitmore family's past. What was Amara carrying around her neck? And why did it feel like a key to a door he wasn't sure he wanted to open? Have you ever felt like someone was hiding something from you, even someone you trusted? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're dying to know how you'd handle it. The parlor was a cocoon of opulence, its velvet drapes and gilded frames absorbing the storm's distant rumble. Amara sat on a plush settee, her posture straight, but her fingers restless, tracing the crescent moon pendant as if it were a talisman. Ethan watched her, his heart caught between admiration and unease. The creme brulee sat untouched before them, its caramelized crust gleaming under the soft light of a crystal lamp. Richard and Evelyn Whitmore occupied the armchairs opposite, their faces composed but their eyes sharp, like hawks circling prey. The air was thick with unspoken questions, and Ethan felt the weight of it pressing against his chest. The conversation had shifted to safer ground, charity boards, upcoming galas, but Ethan couldn't shake the memory of his parents' reaction to Amara's necklace. Richard's cryptic remark about family secrets lingered like a bitter aftertaste. Amara, ever perceptive, seemed to sense the undercurrent too. Her responses were polite, her smile unwavering, but her eyes darted to Ethan, seeking reassurance. He wanted to give it to her, to promise that this night would end with laughter and warmth, but the knot in his gut told him otherwise. Then it happened. Richard leaned forward, his gaze locking onto Amara's necklace with an intensity that made Ethan's pulse spike. "Amara," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. "May I see that pendant up close? It's strikingly familiar." Amara's hand paused, her fingers hovering over the silver crescent. For a moment, Ethan thought she might refuse, her eyes narrowing as if weighing the request. But she nodded, unhooking the clasp with a deft motion and holding the necklace out. The dark stone at its center caught the light, casting a faint, almost otherworldly shimmer across the room. Richard took it, his hands trembling slightly, a detail that sent a jolt through Ethan. His father, the unshakable titan of Whitmore Enterprises, never trembled. Evelyn's breath hitched, her hand flying to her mouth as she leaned closer. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as the pendant became the center of a silent storm. "Where did you say you got this?" Richard asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Amara's brow furrowed, her calm facade cracking just enough to reveal a flicker of unease. "My mother. She said it was a family heirloom, passed down from her grandmother." "Why? What's wrong?" Richard didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned the pendant over, his thumb brushing against an inscription Ethan couldn't see from where he sat. The older man's face paled, his eyes widening as if he'd been struck. This can't be," he muttered, almost to himself. Evelyn's hand gripped Richard's arm, her voice sharp. "Richard, don't." But he shook her off, his gaze snapping back to Amara. "Your mother's name," he demanded, his tone urgent. "What was it?" Amara flinched at the intensity, but her voice remained steady. "Adana Adeyemi. Why does it matter?" The name hit the room like a thunderclap. Evelyn gasped, her hand flying to her chest, while Richard's face contorted with a mix of shock and something darker. Recognition, perhaps, or guilt. Ethan's heart pounded, his mind racing to make sense of the scene. He reached for Amara's hand, needing to anchor himself as much as her, but she was rigid, her eyes locked on Richard. "What's going on?" Ethan demanded, his voice cutting through the tension. "Dad, why are you acting like this?" Richard's eyes flicked to his son, then back to the necklace. "This pendant," he said, his voice hoarse. "It belonged to someone I knew a long time ago. Someone who disappeared." Ethan's stomach dropped. Disappeared? The word hung heavy, laden with implications he couldn't yet grasp. He looked at Amara, expecting confusion, but her expression had shifted. Her eyes were wide, her lips parted, as if a piece of a puzzle she'd never known existed had just clicked into place. "Who?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Who did it belong to?" Richard hesitated, his jaw tightening. When he spoke, each word seemed to cost him. "Her name was Adana. Adana Okoye. Amara's breath caught, her hand flying to her throat where the necklace had rested moments before. Okoye, she repeated, her voice trembling. That was my mother's maiden name. How do you know it? The room spun for Ethan. His father knew Amara's mother? The revelation was a blade, slicing through the fragile trust he'd built with his parents. He looked at Amara, her face a mask of shock and dawning realization, and felt a surge of protectiveness. Whatever this was, it was bigger than a simple coincidence, and it was tearing at the woman he loved. Dad, Ethan said, his voice low but firm. You need to explain. Now. Richard's eyes met his, and for the first time in Ethan's life, he saw something like fear in his father's gaze. It's complicated, Richard said, his voice faltering. Adana Okoye worked for us years ago. She was important to the family. And then she was gone. I thought she'd left the country, but this, he held up the necklace, his hand shaking. This proves she didn't just leave. Evelyn stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Enough, Richard, she snapped, her voice brittle. This isn't the time. But Amara wasn't listening to Evelyn. Her eyes were fixed on Richard, her voice rising with a mix of anger and desperation. What do you mean, gone? What happened to my mother? And why do you have her necklace? Ethan's heart ached at the pain in her voice. He stood, moving to her side, his hand resting on her shoulder. Amara, I'm here, he said softly, though his own mind was a storm of questions. He glared at his father. Answer her. Richard's shoulders sagged, the weight of years seeming to settle on him. I don't know everything, he admitted, his voice barely audible. But that necklace, it was a gift. I gave it to Adana myself. The words landed like a bomb, shattering the fragile calm. Amara's hand tightened in Ethan's, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Ethan's mind reeled. His father had known Amara's mother, had given her the necklace that now hung between them like a key to a locked door. What had happened to Adana Okoye? And why did the truth feel like a threat to everything Ethan held dear? Have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything you thought you knew? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear how you faced the truth. The parlor's warmth felt suffocating now, the air thick with the weight of Richard's confession. Amara sat rigid, her hand still clutching Ethan's, her dark eyes burning with a mix of fury and confusion. The crescent moon necklace lay on the coffee table between them, its dark stone glinting like an accusation. Ethan's mind churned, grappling with the revelation that his father had not only known Amara's mother, but had given her the very pendant that now seemed to unravel their world. The storm outside had quieted, but inside, a different tempest was brewing, one that threatened to tear apart everything Ethan thought he knew about his family, and the woman he loved. Evelyn's voice cut through the silence, sharp and commanding. Richard, you're upsetting our guest. This is hardly the time for old stories. She reached for the necklace, her fingers trembling slightly, but Amara was faster, snatching it back and clutching it to her chest. This isn't just a story, Amara said, her voice low but laced with steel. This is my mother. You knew her, Mr. Whitmore. You gave her this necklace. I deserve to know what happened to her. Ethan's heart ached at the raw pain in her voice. He squeezed her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles, a silent promise to stand by her. But his own anger simmered, directed at his father, whose face was a mask of regret and something deeper. Guilt, perhaps, or fear. Dad, Ethan said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. You can't drop something like that, and then shut down. What happened to Adana Okoye? Richard's gaze flickered to Evelyn, a silent exchange that only heightened Ethan's unease. It's not that simple, Richard said, his voice heavy. Adana she worked for us in the late 90s. She was brilliant, ambitious. She started as an assistant at Whitmore Enterprises, but she had a mind for strategy, a vision that rivaled anyone in the boardroom. I mentored her, trusted her. And then she vanished. Vanished. Amara's voice cracked, her fingers tightening around the necklace. People don't just vanish. What aren't you telling me? Evelyn stood, her movements brisk, as if trying to outrun the conversation. Amara, dear, this is all ancient history. Let's not ruin a perfectly lovely evening. Stop it, Mom, Ethan snapped, his patience fraying. He turned to Amara, his eyes softening. I'm as lost as you are, but I promise we'll get answers. He faced his father again, his jaw tight. Keep going. What happened to her? Richard sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. Adana was working on a sensitive project, a merger that would have changed the landscape of our company. She was privy to delicate information. One day, she didn't show up to work. We tried to reach her, but her apartment was empty, her phone disconnected. We assumed she'd left, maybe gone back to Nigeria. But that necklace... He trailed off, his eyes fixed on the pendant in Amara's hand. I gave it to her as a token of gratitude for her work. I never thought I'd see it again. Amara's breath hitched, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. My mother didn't go back to Nigeria, she said, her voice trembling but fierce. She died in a car accident when I was 10. In Lagos. If she was here, working for you, how did she end up back there? And why didn't anyone know? Ethan's chest tightened at the pain in her words. He wanted to pull her into his arms, to shield her from the hurt, but he knew she needed answers more than comfort. He turned to his father, his voice low and dangerous. What aren't you saying, Dad? What was this sensitive project? And why does it feel like you're hiding something? Richard's face hardened, but before he could respond, the parlor door opened, and a man stepped in. Tall, with sharp cheekbones and a tailored suit, he carried an air of quiet authority. Ethan recognized him instantly. Julian Pierce, his father's longtime lawyer and confidant. Julian's presence was never a good sign. He appeared only when the Whitmore family needed to bury a scandal or silence a threat. Richard, Julian said, his voice smooth but urgent. A word, please. Evelyn's eyes darted to Julian, relief flashing across her face. Yes, let's take a break. Amara, Ethan, why don't you take a walk in the garden? The rain stopped. Amara's jaw clenched, her gaze never leaving Richard. I'm not going anywhere until I get answers. Julian's smile was polite but cold. Miss Adeyemi, I understand this is emotional, but some matters are best discussed privately. I assure you, we'll address your concerns. Ethan stood, his hand still in Amara's, his protective instincts flaring. No, she deserves to know now. Whatever this is, it involves her mother. Julian's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Warning, perhaps. Ethan, trust me. This is for everyone's benefit. Amara rose, her movements graceful but charged with defiance. I don't trust anyone who dodges questions about my mother, she said, her voice cutting through the room. She turned to Ethan, her eyes softening for a moment. Can we talk? Alone? Ethan nodded, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and admiration. He led her out of the parlor, through the French doors to the garden, where the air was cool and heavy with the scent of wet roses. The moonlight cast long shadows, and Amara's necklace glinted as she clutched it, her breathing uneven. I don't understand, she whispered, her voice breaking. My mother never talked about working for a company like Whitmore Enterprises. She said she was a teacher before I was born. Why would she lie? And why does your father look like he's seen a ghost? Ethan pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her, her warmth grounding him amidst the chaos. I don't know, he admitted, his voice muffled against her hair. But I've never seen my dad like that. He's scared, Amara. And my mom, she's trying to shut this down. There's something they're not telling us. Amara pulled back, her eyes searching his. Ethan, I need to know what happened to her. If your father was involved, if he knows something. Her voice faltered, and she pressed the necklace to her lips, as if it could speak the truth. Ethan's heart ached at the vulnerability in her eyes, a stark contrast to the strength she'd shown all evening. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped. We'll find out, he promised, his voice fierce. Together. I'm not letting this go, and I'm not letting you face it alone. She nodded, her lips trembling into a small smile. The moonlight caught her face, illuminating the fire in her eyes, and Ethan felt a pull stronger than ever. A need to protect her, to stand by her, to love her through whatever truth lay ahead. He leaned in, their foreheads touching, their breaths mingling in the cool night air. For a moment, the world was just them, the connection between them a lifeline in the storm. But the moment was fleeting. From the house, Ethan caught a glimpse of Julian and Richard in the parlor, their heads bent together, their voices low and urgent. Evelyn stood by the window, watching them, her face pale. The sight sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Whatever secret tied Amara's mother to his family, it was bigger than he'd imagined, and it was far from over. Have you ever had to confront someone you trusted to uncover a hidden truth? Share your experience in the comments. We'd love to know how you found the courage to push forward. The garden's cool air did little to ease the fire raging in Amara's chest as she and Ethan walked the winding paths, the wet gravel crunching under their feet. The scent of rain-soaked earth mingled with the faint perfume of blooming night jasmine, but Amara barely noticed. Her mind was a whirlwind, replaying Richard's words, the way his eyes had darkened when he spoke of her mother. The necklace burned against her skin, a weighty reminder of secrets long buried. Ethan's hand in hers was a tether, grounding her, but even his presence couldn't quell the storm of questions brewing inside her. They stopped by a stone bench overlooking a koi pond, the water still and reflective under the moon's gaze. Amara sat, pulling Ethan down beside her. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady but laced with urgency, "your father knows more than he's saying. That project he mentioned, the merger, it wasn't just business. I can feel it." Ethan's brow furrowed, his blue eyes searching hers in the dim light. "I know," he admitted, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Dad's always been guarded about the past, but this, it's different. And Julian showing up? That's his fixer. Whatever this is, it's big enough to scare them." Amara nodded, her fingers absently toying with the pendant. "My aunt always said my mother left Nigeria for a better life, but she never mentioned America or Whitmore Enterprises. It's like there's a whole chapter of her life erased." She paused, her voice dropping. What if she didn't leave willingly? What if something happened? The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Ethan's grip tightened, his face paling. "Don't go there yet," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We need proof. Let's go back inside. I'll make them talk." But as they rose, a rustle in the bushes caught their attention. Julian emerged from the shadows, his suit blending with the night, his expression unreadable. "Ethan, Amara," he said smoothly, "your father would like a word. Privately." Amara's spine stiffened. "Anything he has to say, he can say to both of us." Julian's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm afraid it's family business." "She's with me," Ethan shot back, his arm wrapping protectively around Amara's waist. "That makes her family." Julian hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Very well. But remember, some truths are better left buried." They followed him back to the house, the warning echoing in Amara's ears. The parlor was empty now, Evelyn nowhere in sight. Richard sat in his armchair, a glass of scotch in hand, his face etched with lines Amara hadn't noticed before. He gestured for them to sit, his eyes avoiding Amara's. "I've asked Julian to look into this," Richard began, his voice measured. "But there are things you need to know, Amara. About your mother." Amara's heart pounded, her breath shallow. "Tell me." Richard took a sip of scotch, his hand steady now. "Adana wasn't just an employee. She was special, intelligent, driven. We grew close during the merger talks. It was a high-stakes deal with an African conglomerate. Oil rights, billions on the line. Adana uncovered irregularities, funds being siphoned, bribes. She confronted me about it." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes wide. "What irregularities?" Richard's gaze flicked to Julian, who stood by the door like a sentinel. corporate espionage. Someone inside was leaking information to competitors. Adana thought it was me, but it wasn't. We argued. She threatened to go public. Then, the next day, she was gone. Amara's world tilted. You're saying she disappeared because of this? Because she knew too much? Richard shook his head. I don't know. We searched for her, privately, to avoid scandal. But there was no trace. Until now. His eyes locked on the necklace. That pendant. I engraved it with a message. May I see it again? Amara hesitated, then handed it over. Richard turned it, revealing tiny script on the back. To Adana, with eternal gratitude. R.W. But as he examined it closer, his face drained of color. This isn't right. He held it up, pointing to a small notch in the silver. The original had a hidden compartment. For a microchip. Amara's breath caught. A what? A data drive, Richard said, his voice urgent. He pressed the edge of the pendant, and to everyone's shock, it clicked open, revealing a tiny slot, empty. Adana hid evidence in here. Proof of the embezzlement. If it's gone. Julian stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. Then someone took it. And if Adana returned to Nigeria, she might have used it, or hidden it. Ethan's mind raced, piecing it together. Wait, Amara's mother died in a car accident. What if it wasn't an accident? What if someone silenced her? The room fell silent, the implications sinking in like a stone. Amara's hands trembled, tears welling in her eyes. My mother murdered? Because of your company? Richard's face crumpled, guilt etching deeper lines. I don't know. But if that's true, then the person responsible might still be out there. And now that you're here, with the necklace. Amara stood, her voice breaking. You think I'm in danger? Julian's voice was cold. Possibly. The merger partners, they're powerful. If they learn about this. Ethan rose, pulling Amara close, his heart hammering with fear and fury. We need to find that chip. Or whatever evidence is left. He turned to his father. Who was involved? Who could have done this? Richard hesitated, then whispered a name that changed everything. Evelyn. She handled the finances back then. She knew about Adana's suspicions. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Ethan's mother? Involved in embezzlement? Possibly worse? Amara's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. The woman who'd welcomed her with cold politeness might be the architect of her mother's fate. As the truth unraveled, Amara felt a surge of betrayal, but also a fierce determination. She looked at Ethan, his face a mirror of her shock, and felt their bond deepen in the shared vulnerability. Whatever came next, they would face it together, even if it meant tearing down the Whitmore empire to uncover the truth. Have you ever discovered a betrayal that shook your world, yet found strength in unexpected alliances? Tell us in the comments how you navigated the pain and emerged stronger. The parlor's heavy silence stretched like a taut wire after Richard's whispered accusation against Evelyn. Amara's mind reeled, the air thick with betrayal's bitter tang. She clutched Ethan's arm, her nails digging in slightly, seeking solidity in the chaos. Ethan's face was a storm, shock widening his eyes, his jaw clenched in disbelief. The necklace, now back in her hand, felt like a burning coal, its hidden compartment a Pandora's box that had unleashed horrors she never imagined. Evelyn, Ethan echoed, his voice raw, barely above a whisper. He turned to his father, searching for any sign of retraction, but Richard's gaze was steady, weighted with years of unspoken burdens. Julian stood motionless by the door, his expression a mask of professional detachment, but Amara caught the flicker of unease in his eyes. Richard nodded slowly, his Scotch glass forgotten on the table. She oversaw the accounts during the merger. Adana came to me with evidence, discrepancies in the ledgers, offshore transfers. I confronted Evelyn, but she denied it, said it was a setup by rivals. Then Adana vanished, and the evidence with her. He paused, his voice cracking. I wanted to believe my wife, Ethan. I buried it, for the family's sake. But now, with the necklace here, empty, It all comes back. Amora's stomach churned, while rising in her throat. Her mother, brilliant, loving Adana, had been caught in a web of corporate greed, possibly silenced by the very woman who'd served her dinner hours ago. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to crumble. "If Evelyn did this," she said, her voice trembling with rage, "if she hurt my mother, I won't stop until she pays." Ethan pulled away slightly, his hand running through his hair in frustration. "Mom? Involved in embezzlement? Murder?" The words tasted like poison on his tongue. He paced the room, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet, the scent of aged leather and wood polish cloying in the confined space. "This can't be true. There has to be proof." Julian cleared his throat, stepping forward. "There might be. Old files, perhaps. But digging this up could destroy everything. The company, your family. Are you sure you want to pursue this?" Amora's eyes flashed. "My mother is dead. Destroyed or not, I need the truth." Ethan stopped pacing, his gaze locking on Amora's. He saw the pain etched in her features, the fire of determination that had first drawn him to her. But beneath it, vulnerability, a fear of losing more than she'd already lost. His heart twisted. He loved her deeply, unexpectedly. Yet now, their love was a bridge over a chasm widening by the minute, with his mother possibly the architect of her grief. Before he could respond, the door burst open. Evelyn stood there, her face ashen, eyes wild. She'd clearly overheard, her pearls clutched in a white-knuckled grip. "What lies are you spreading, Richard?" she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. Richard rose, his face hardening. "No lies, Evelyn. The necklace, Adana's necklace. The compartment's empty. Where's the chip?" Evelyn's eyes darted to the pendant in Amora's hand, and for a split second, Amora saw it, guilt, raw and unfiltered. Then it was gone, replaced by icy defiance. "I don't know what you're talking about. Adana was a thief, nothing more. She took what she could and fled." "Liar!" Amora spat, stepping forward. "My mother wasn't a thief. She was honest, kind. You did something to her." Evelyn's gaze turned to Amora, sharp as a blade. "You have no idea what you're stirring up, girl. Leave this house. Now." Ethan moved between them, his body a shield. "Mom, stop. If you're innocent, prove it." Evelyn's laugh was brittle, echoing off the walls. "Prove it? After all these years? Your father has poisoned you against me." She turned to Richard. "And you, always the hero, mentoring that woman, giving her gifts. How convenient that she disappears, and now her daughter shows up to accuse me." The room erupted into accusations, voices overlapping in a cacophony of hurt and anger. Julian tried to intervene, but it was futile. Amora felt the walls closing in, the opulence mocking her pain. She grabbed Ethan's arm. "I can't stay here," she whispered, her voice breaking. Ethan nodded, his face torn. "Let's go." But as they moved toward the door, Evelyn blocked their path. "If you leave with her, Ethan, don't come back. She's poison, just like her mother." The words struck like a slap. Ethan's eyes filled with tears, his world fracturing. "Mom, please." Evelyn's face softened for a moment, then hardened. "Choose, Ethan. Your family, or her." Amora's heart shattered at the ultimatum. She saw the conflict in Ethan's eyes, the love for his mother warring with his love for her. "Ethan," she said softly, "I won't make you choose. But I can't stay silent." He hesitated, the moment stretching into eternity. Then, with a heavy sigh, he took Amora's hand. "I'm with you," he said, his voice firm despite the tremor. "We need the truth." Evelyn's face crumpled, tears streaming. "Then go. Both of you." They fled the house, the grand doors slamming behind them like a final judgment. In the Bentley, Amora sobbed, the necklace clutched in her fist. Ethan drove aimlessly, his own tears blurring the road. "What if she's right?" he whispered. "What if pursuing this destroys us all?" Amora wiped her eyes, her voice hollow. "It already has. Your family, our relationship. It's all crumbling." They checked into a hotel, the sterile room a stark contrast to the mansion's luxury. Lying in bed, Amara turned away, her back to Ethan, the distance between them vast despite the shared sheets. She felt alone, adrift in a sea of despair. Her mother's death, once a tragic accident, now loomed as murder. And Ethan, her anchor, was slipping away, torn by loyalty. Morning brought no relief. Ethan received a text from Julian. "Stop digging. For your safety." Amara's phone buzzed with an anonymous message. "Forget the past, or suffer like your mother." Fear gripped them, the threats confirming their worst suspicions. Separated by doubt, Amara questioning Ethan's commitment, Ethan grappling with his mother's possible guilt. They argued, words sharp as knives. "You're defending her," Amara accused. "I'm not. But she's my mother," Ethan retorted, his voice breaking. The fight ended in silence, Amara storming out, necklace in hand, determined to find answers alone. Ethan watched her go, despair washing over him. Everything seemed lost, their love, his family, the truth buried under layers of deception. In this darkest hour, hope flickered like a dying flame, threatening to extinguish forever. Have you ever faced a moment where everything you cherished seemed to slip away, forcing you to confront impossible choices? Share in the comments how you found the strength to endure. We're here to support each other through these stories. The hotel room felt like a cage, its neutral walls closing in on Ethan as he stared at the door Amara had slammed behind her. Her words echoed in his mind. "I can't do this if you're not all in," cutting deeper than any accusation. He sank onto the bed, his head in his hands, the weight of the night pressing down like an unyielding fog. The anonymous threat on Amara's phone burned in his memory. "Forget the past, or suffer like your mother." It was a warning, a shadow from the past reaching out to claim them. But losing Amara? That was a fresh wound, raw and bleeding. Hours passed in a blur of self-doubt. Ethan paced the room, the carpet muffling his restless steps, the distant hum of city traffic a mocking reminder of life moving on without him. He replayed the parlor confrontation, his mother's defiant eyes, his father's guilty confessions, the empty compartment in the necklace. Evelyn's ultimatum had forced a choice he never wanted to make. But in defending his mother, had he lost Amara's trust? The realization hit him like a cold wave. He couldn't let fear dictate his path. Amara was his future, her strength his inspiration. He had to fight, for the truth, for her, for them. Grabbing his phone, Ethan dialed a number he rarely used. His old college friend, Marcus, a private investigator who'd traded frat parties for digging up corporate dirt. "Marcus," Ethan said when he answered, his voice urgent. "I need your help. It's about my family, and a woman from the past." Marcus listened as Ethan spilled the story. The merger, Adana, the necklace, the threats. "Sounds messy," Marcus said, his tone professional but concerned. "I'll poke around. Give me 24 hours. But Ethan couldn't wait. He needed to find Amara, to bridge the gap his hesitation had created. He texted her, "I'm sorry. I choose you. Let's find the truth together." No response. His heart sank, but determination sparked. He left the hotel, driving through the rain-slicked streets to her Brooklyn apartment, the wipers swishing like a metronome counting down to redemption. Amara, meanwhile, wandered the city, her coat pulled tight against the chill, the necklace a heavy weight around her neck. She found herself at her community center, the building dark but familiar, its walls echoing with memories of purpose and resilience. Unlocking the door, she slipped inside, the scent of chalk and old books wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. In her office, she collapsed into her chair, tears flowing freely now. The fight with Ethan had been the breaking point, his divided loyalties a mirror to her own fears of abandonment. But beneath the hurt, love lingered, a quiet flame refusing to die. As she wiped her eyes, her gaze fell on an old photo on her desk, her mother, Adana, smiling brightly, her arm around a young Amara. What happened to you, Mama? She whispered, tracing the image. The necklace caught the desk lamp's light, and in a moment of clarity, Amara examined it closer. The empty compartment. Perhaps it held clues beyond the missing chip. She pried at the edges, her nails catching on a faint seam. With a click, a tiny slip of paper tumbled out, yellowed with age. Unfolding it, Amara's breath caught. It was a note in elegant script. If found, seek the Guardian in Lagos. Trust no one but the bloodline. Ao Adana Okoye. Her mother's handwriting, confirmed by the looping and matching old letters Amara cherished. A guardian? In Lagos. It was a lead, a breadcrumb from the grave. Her phone buzzed, Ethan's text. Relief washed over her, mingled with hope. She called him, her voice soft but resolute. Ethan, I found something. In the necklace. Ethan's car screeched to a halt outside her apartment, just as she arrived home. He rushed to her, pulling her into his arms, the rain mingling with their tears. I'm all in, he murmured, his lips brushing her forehead. No more doubts. We'll face this together. Inside, Amara showed him the note. My aunt in Lagos, she might know who this guardian is. My mother must have hidden something there. Ethan's eyes lit up with renewed purpose. As they discussed plans, his phone rang Marcus. Got something, Marcus said. Old records from the merger. Evelyn signed off on suspicious transfers, but there's a third party, Victor Kane, a rival exec. He vanished around the same time as Adana. And get this, he's been spotted in New York recently. The name sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Kane, a ghost from the past, possibly the key to unraveling the web. Thanks, Marcus. Keep digging. Amara and Ethan shared a look, the air charged with possibility. The threats, the betrayals, they were obstacles, but now they had leads. The Guardian in Lagos, Victor Kane in New York. Ethan's hand found Amara's, their fingers intertwining, a silent vow. In this turning point, despair gave way to hope, their love reignited with deeper understanding. United, they would confront the shadows, armed with courage and the unyielding bond that had brought them together. Have you ever hit rock bottom in a relationship or personal crisis, only to discover a hidden strength or clue that turned things around? Share your turning point stories in the comments. We'd love to celebrate your resilience with you. The dawn light filtered through the curtains of Amara's Brooklyn apartment, casting a golden glow over the cluttered table where she and Ethan pored over maps, old emails, and the cryptic note from the necklace. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the faint aroma of jasmine from Amara's perfume, a comforting reminder of their renewed unity. Ethan's hand rested on hers as they planned their next moves, the touch electric with the passion that had reignited between them the night before. Whispers of love exchanged in the quiet hours, bodies entwined in a dance of forgiveness and desire. Marcus is tracking Victor Kane, Ethan said, his voice steady, eyes alight with determination. And your aunt in Lagos, she could lead us to the Guardian. We fly out tomorrow. Amara nodded, her fingers tracing the note's words. It's risky, but we have to. For my mother. Their moment was interrupted by a knock at the door, sharp, insistent. Ethan tensed, his protective instincts flaring. Stay here, he murmured, approaching cautiously. Peering through the peephole, he saw Julian, his father's lawyer, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. Julian. Ethan opened the door a crack. What are you doing here? Julian glanced over his shoulder, his voice low. I need to talk. It's about Evelyn and Kane. Amara joined Ethan, her eyes narrowing. Why should we trust you? Because I'm done covering for them, Julian said, stepping inside when Ethan relented. He pulled out a flash drive, his hand steady. I've been with the Whitmores for decades. I knew Adana. She was innocent. This drive has copies of the old ledgers, proof of the embezzlement. Evelyn and Kane were partners. They siphoned funds, framed Adana when she discovered it. Ethan's jaw tightened. And my father? Richard suspected, but couldn't prove it. He protected Evelyn out of love. But Kane, he orchestrated Adana's disappearance, forced her to flee to Nigeria, then arranged the accident to silence her forever. Amara's breath hitched, tears welling. Why now? Why help us? Julian's eyes softened. Seeing you, Amara, you look just like her. Adana deserved better. And Ethan, your father's dying, cancer. He wants redemption. The revelation was a gut punch, but it fueled their resolve. As Julian left, warning of Kane's dangerous network, Ethan's phone buzzed. Marcus. Kane's at a warehouse in Queens. Meeting someone. Get there quick. They raced to the location, the city blurring past in a haze of adrenaline. The warehouse loomed, its rusted doors ajar. Sneaking in, they hid behind crates, the air thick with dust and tension. Voices echoed, Kane's gravelly tone, and another familiar, Evelyn's. You promised this was over, Evelyn hissed, her voice echoing off the metal walls. Kane laughed, a cold sound. It was until that girl showed up with the necklace. The chip's still out there. Adana hid it before she ran. If it's found, we're done. Amara's heart pounded, her hand clutching the pendant. Ethan signaled silence, recording on his phone. But a loose crate shifted, clattering loudly. Kane whirled, gun drawn. Who's there? Chaos erupted. Kane fired blindly, bullets ricocheting. Ethan tackled Amara to the ground, shielding her. Run, he urged, but she refused, standing with him. Evelyn's eyes widened in shock. Ethan? What are you? Enough, Mom, Ethan said, voice breaking but firm. It's over. We know everything. Kane sneered, advancing. You know nothing, boy. He aimed at Amara. Just like her mother, too nosy. In a flash, Amara remembered her self-defense training from the community center. She lunged, kicking the gun from Kane's hand. Ethan charged, tackling him to the ground in a flurry of punches. Evelyn screamed, frozen in horror. Sirens wailed. Marcus had called the police. Officers swarmed, cuffing Kane as he spat curses. Evelyn collapsed, sobbing. I didn't want this, she whispered. It was the money, the power. Adana threatened everything. Ethan knelt beside her, his face a mix of anger and sorrow. You destroyed lives, Mom. For what? Amara approached, her voice steady. My mother trusted you. Why? Evelyn's tears flowed. Jealousy. Richard cared for her, too much. I saw the necklace, knew it was from him. Kane handled the rest. The confession sealed it. As Evelyn was led away, she turned to Ethan. I'm sorry. In the aftermath, they flew to Lagos. Amara's aunt embraced them, tears streaming. The Guardian, it's me, she revealed. Adana sent the chip before she died, hidden in a safe deposit box. The chip contained damning evidence, emails, transfers, Kane's orders for the hit. Submitted to authorities, it cleared Adana's name, exposing the full conspiracy. Whitmore Enterprises faced scrutiny, but Richard, in his final days, reformed it, donating billions to charities like Amara's Center. Ethan and Amara stood by Richard's bedside as he passed, his last words a plea for forgiveness. In the end, justice prevailed, their love emerging stronger, forged in the fire of truth. Have you ever confronted a deep betrayal and found triumph on the other side? Share your heroic moments in the comments. We'd love to cheer you on. The Lagos sun hung low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink as Amara and Ethan stood outside her aunt's modest home, the air rich with the scent of blooming hibiscus and the distant hum of city life. The past week had been a whirlwind. Flights across continents, tearful reunions, and the weight of truths finally laid bare. Amara's hand rested in Ethan's, her fingers entwined with his, the crescent moon necklace gleaming against her collarbone. It was no longer a symbol of mystery, but a testament to her mother's courage, a legacy she now carried with pride. Inside, Amara's aunt, Imani, had handed over the safe deposit box key, her eyes glistening with relief. Adana knew you'd find your way to this, Imani had said, pressing the key into Amara's palm. The chip, retrieved from a Lagos bank, had been the final piece of the puzzle. Encrypted files detailing Victor Kane's embezzlement scheme, Evelyn's complicity, and the orders that led to Adana's death. Submitting it to international authorities had been both cathartic and painful, a necessary step to clear her mother's name and bring justice to those who'd stolen her life. Back in New York, the fallout was seismic. Whitmore Enterprises faced public scrutiny, its stock plummeting as headlines screamed of corporate corruption. Kane was indicted, his empire crumbling under the weight of evidence. Evelyn, too, faced charges, her tearful confession in court a hollow echo of the woman who'd once ruled the Whitmore estate with icy precision. Amara watched the proceedings from the gallery, Ethan at her side, his presence a steady anchor. When Evelyn's eyes met his, filled with regret, Ethan didn't look away. He nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement, not forgiveness, and turned to Amara, his hand squeezing hers. Richard's death came quietly, a few days after their return from Lagos. In his final moments, he'd gripped Ethan's hand, his voice weak but clear. "Make it right, son. For Adana. For us." Ethan had promised, tears streaming, and when Richard passed, he left behind a reformed legacy. Billions redirected to social justice initiatives, including a substantial grant to Amara's community center. It was a bittersweet victory, a redemption Richard had earned in his final act. Now, back in Brooklyn, Amara stood on the steps of her community center, the building buzzing with new life. The grant had funded renovations, fresh paint, new computers, a music room for the kids. Children laughed in the courtyard, their voices a melody of hope that echoed her mother's spirit. Ethan stood beside her, his arm around her waist, his eyes reflecting the same pride she felt. Their love had been tested in the fire of betrayal and loss, but it emerged stronger, tempered by shared vulnerability and unwavering commitment. "I was thinking," Ethan said, his voice soft as he pulled her closer, "we should name the new wing after your mother. The Adana Okoye Center for Change." Amara's heart swelled, tears pricking her eyes. "She'd love that," she whispered, turning to face him. The sunlight caught his features, softening the lines of worry that had marked their journey. "You've been with me through all of this, Ethan. Even when it meant losing your family." He cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "You are my family now," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I love you, Amara. I choose you every day." Their kiss was slow, deliberate, a promise sealed in the warmth of the afternoon. The necklace pressed against her skin, no longer a weight, but a reminder of her mother's strength and the love that had carried Amara through the darkness. As they pulled apart, Ethan grinned, a spark of mischief in his eyes. "So, about that champagne story from the gala, think I've earned that second glass yet?" Amara laughed, the sound bright and free. "Maybe, but you'll have to tell me a new story first." They walked into the center, hand in hand, greeted by the vibrant chaos of kids painting murals and volunteers organizing supplies. The future stretched before them, not without challenges, but filled with possibility. Amara felt her mother's presence in the necklace, in the work she did, in the love she shared with Ethan. The past was resolved, its secrets laid to rest, and in its place was a new beginning. A life built on truth, love, and the courage to fight for what mattered. As they joined the kids, helping to hang a banner for the center's grand reopening, Amara caught Ethan's eye across the room. He winked, and she smiled, her heart full. The Whitmore empire had crumbled, but from its ashes, they'd built something better, a legacy of hope, redemption, and unbreakable love. Have you ever found closure after a long journey for truth? And how did it shape your future? Share your stories of triumph and new beginnings in the comments. We'd love to hear how you found your happy ending. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as entertaining and even more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.